My sister tried to take me out with a birthday cake. Not in the haha we smashed frosting on your nose way. In the you might not wake up tomorrow way. I was turning 36. The lights were dim in the restaurant, everyone leaning in around the table, the cake in front of me throwing little orange shadows across their faces. People were singing. I remember thinking, as I looked at all those faces, that half of them wouldn't have noticed if I'd never shown up. I leaned forward to blow out the candles, already planning to wish for something small and harmless, like less overtime or a vacation next year. Lindsay leaned in too. Except she didn't blow. She grabbed the cake with both hands and smashed it into my face so hard my neck whiplashed. There was a sound. A horrible, sharp, hollow sound. For a second I thought it was the plate breaking. Then the back of my skull met the solid edge of the table behind me. Everything flared white. Warmth started spreading from my scalp down into my hair. Vanilla and sugar filled my nose. But underneath it was this metallic, coppery tang. Blood. My ears rang. The room lurched sideways. Through icing and tears and spinning light, I could see Lindsay's face above me. Her mouth made a shocked O. Her eyebrows creased together. But her eyes? For one heartbeat, before her expression shifted into performative panic, she was smiling. Not big. Not obvious. Just a small, satisfied curl of the lips. Then it was gone. Lindsay, someone gasped. Jesus, that was too hard, someone else said, half laughing. My mother stood up, chair scraping loudly. Oh, for God's sake, she snapped. Kelly, get up. It was a joke. Stop being so dramatic. I was dizzy. My stomach was rolling. And still, on reflex, I apologized. Sorry, I mumbled through frosting. Sorry. I'm fine. I let them clean me up in the bathroom. I let Lindsay dab my hairline with cocktail napkins, clucking about how she didn't know her own strength. I laughed at all the right moments. Then I went home with dried blood crusted into my hair and a headache that got worse with every breath. The next morning, an ER doctor took one look at my scans, went pale, and silently reached for the phone. He didn't reassure me. He didn't say, "You'll be fine." He called the police. Because what he saw in those images wasn't just last night's injury. It was a 30-year pattern my family had done everything in their power to pretend didn't exist. Have you ever had that moment? The one where you realize the people who were supposed to protect you have been the ones hurting you over and over, while convincing you it was all in your head. Because that was the day my entire life split into before and after. My name is Kelly Hughes. I'm 36. By day, I'm the kind of person who blends into offices and spreadsheets, financial analyst, 10 years in the same firm, the responsible one who maxes her 401k and packs leftovers for lunch. I bought my condo without help from anyone. No cosigner. No gift money. No one cheering in the bank parking lot. Just me and a stack of paperwork. For a long time, I thought that meant I was free. I thought a steady paycheck and my own set of keys meant I'd escape the gravitational pull of my family. That night, lying on my bed while my skull throbbed with every heartbeat and dried blood tugged at my hair, I realized how wrong I'd been. I'd never escaped. I'd just learned to suffer quietly. The pain was impossible. It wasn't just a headache. It was a deep, pounding, radiating thing, like someone had buried a live grenade at the base of my skull and was slowly twisting it. Every time I moved, waves of nausea rolled through me. I knew, logically, that I should go to the hospital. That if this were anyone else, I'd be the first one shoving them into an Uber and saying, "We're getting this checked." But when it was me, all the old programming kicked in. "You're fine. You're overreacting. Don't make a scene." My whole life had trained me to believe that my pain was an inconvenience to other people, that the worst thing I could be was too much. It started early. My biological father left when I was 5. No blowout fight that I remember. No big goodbye. One day he was there, tired eyes, coffee mug, shoes by the door. The next, his side of the closet was empty, and every photo with his face in it quietly vanished from the shelves. If I asked where Dad was, my mother would go stiff and say, "We don't talk about him." So I stopped asking. 2 years later, she married Dan. Dan was gentle, polite, the kind of man who always made sure everyone else had a clean plate and a refilled glass, but somehow never talked above a certain volume. It didn't take long to figure out why. The first time he disagreed with my mother at dinner, she didn't yell. She just went quiet. For 3 days. The air in the house turned to glass. Every movement felt like it might shatter something. After that, Dan stopped disagreeing. And I learned a rule I would live by for decades. Silence keeps the peace. Questions are punishable. And then there was Lindsay, my little sister. 18 months younger, but you'd never know it from the way everyone treated her. Lindsay was the sunshine, the special one, the handful whose tantrums were just because she's passionate. Mom poured money, time, and attention into Lindsay like water into a leaky bucket. 3 separate businesses that never made a profit? Learning experiences. Rent when she was between jobs. That's what family is for. Meanwhile, if I got a promotion, nice, but don't brag about it. It'll make your sister feel bad. If Lindsay showed up with some cheap certificate from an online course, Mom acted like she'd won a Nobel Prize. If I did anything remotely similar, it was just expected. Background noise. I can't count how many times I watched my mother's face light up when Lindsay walked into a room. How her voice lifted. How her eyes sparkled. Then she'd turn to me and her whole demeanor would dim by a fraction, like someone turned the brightness down a notch. That contrast, light for Lindsay, shadow for me, was the story of my childhood. At some point, I stopped asking what I'd done wrong. I decided some kids are just easier to love. And I convinced myself I was the kind you tolerated because you had to. That night, after the party, with my head pounding and my pillow sticky at the edge, my mind refused to stay in the present. It kept scrolling back through faces and moments. It landed on my Aunt Patricia, my mother's younger sister. She'd been at the restaurant, sitting at the far end of the table like she always did, hands folded in her lap, shoulders slightly hunched like she was trying to take up less space. We'd never been close. We exchanged polite hellos at holidays. She gave me gift cards for my birthday. I sent her flowers on hers. But I'd always felt this weird pull toward her. Like we were both ghosts in a house built for louder people. When the cake hit my face and I went down, I remembered hearing a chair scrape violently against the floor. Patricia's chair. In the split second before I blacked out, I'd seen her through tears and frosting. She was white as a sheet, one hand clamped over her mouth, the other gripping the table, so tightly the cloth bunched under her fingers. Not shocked in the way everyone else was. Horrified in a way that said, not again. From there, my brain jumped to someone else who was gone. My grandmother, Eleanor. My mother's mother. The one person in my family who never made me feel like a burden. Her house had always smelled like sugar cookies and coffee. When I was a kid, she'd sit me on her floral couch, tuck a blanket around my legs, and read to me for hours, as if there was absolutely nothing else in the world she'd rather be doing. 3 years ago, she died. At her funeral, her lawyer had pulled me aside and handed me a small wooden box. There'd been a handwritten card attached. Only open when you truly need to, my sweet girl. You'll know when. I'd taken it home and shoved it to the back of my closet. Honestly, I'd been afraid to open it. Afraid to find nothing special inside and feel stupid. Afraid to find something huge and feel more alone. So I left it there, gathering dust. But now, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And about another moment from that same funeral. In the hallway outside the viewing room, I'd seen Lindsay talking to Grandma's lawyer. Not talking. Arguing. Her jaw was tight, her voice low and sharp, hands moving in clipped, angry gestures. When she'd noticed me watching, her whole demeanor shifted. Instantly, her shoulders relaxed. Her mouth turned down in a practiced little sad smile. Oh, she'd said breezily, I was just asking about the service details. You know me, always trying to organize stuff. And because it was what I'd always done, I believed her. Now, lying there with my head screaming and my stomach turning, my brain started to stitch together other pieces. Little accidents I'd had over the last few years. The fall down the stairs a few days after Grandma's funeral. The time I slipped in a parking lot and bashed my shoulder on the curb. The barbecue where I tripped over nothing and nearly went face first into the grill. In every memory, Lindsay was there. Close enough to grab me. Close enough to say, God, Kelly, you've always been so clumsy. Close enough to tell the story first. My eyes drifted to the closet across the room. I could see the corner of the wooden box peeking out from under a stack of sweaters. For the first time, a thought I'd never allowed myself surfaced. What if Grandma had seen something? What if that box wasn't just nostalgia? What if it was a warning I'd been too afraid to open? Ugh. By morning, sleep hadn't helped. If anything, things were worse. The headache had evolved into something monstrous, like my brain was too big for my skull. Light stabbed. Sound grated. When I tried to sit up, the room tilted violently to one side and I had to grab the nightstand. This was no longer a take a couple ibuprofen situation. I got dressed on autopilot, moved slowly to my car, and drove to the emergency room, stopping twice along the way when the horizon started to slide. The ER was buzzing with people and noise and the smell of disinfectant, but they triaged me quickly when I mentioned head trauma. A nurse wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm, clipped a pulse ox sensor to my finger, and started firing questions. When did you hit your head? How did it happen? Any vomiting? Double vision? Trouble concentrating? Yes, I said. Yes. Yes. She tapped notes into a tablet. The doctor will be in shortly. Dr. Matthews arrived a few minutes later. He looked like someone's favorite grandfather. Tall, silver-haired, wire-rimmed glasses. Lines in his face that suggested both laughter and worry. He gently examined the back of my head, followed my eye movements, checked my reflexes. I'm going to order a CT scan and x-rays, he said. Given your symptoms and the mechanism of injury, I'd rather be overly cautious. The imaging room was cold and humming. As the machine whirred around my head, I stared up at the plastic ring and tried not to think about how much my insurance deductible was. I could almost hear Lindsay in my head scoffing. You really went to the ER for a bump on the head? Drama queen. When Dr. Matthews came back into the exam room, his whole vibe had changed. The easy small talk was gone. His posture was a little stiffer, his brow furrowed. He pulled up my scans on the monitor and turned the screen toward me. Ms. Hughes, he said, you do have a small fracture at the back of your skull. It lines up with the area you described hitting. He zoomed in. It should heal with monitoring and rest. But that's not the only thing I'm concerned about. He switched to a different image. This is your chest x-ray. He traced a line along one of my ribs with his finger. Do you see this area here? That's a healed fracture. It didn't set correctly, which tells me it was never treated properly. Judging by the healing, I'd estimate it's around 3 years old. 3 years. My mind instantly went to the staircase. The sharp pain whenever I tried to breathe too deeply. The way laughing made me want to curl up and cry. Lindsay bringing me ice packs and heating pads and telling me I was being ridiculous when I mentioned urgent care. It's just a bad bruise, she'd insisted. You're not made of glass, Cal. Don't waste money on a doctor. You always make such a big deal out of everything. I'd nodded. I'd believed her. I always had. Did you know you had a broken rib? Dr. Matthews asked quietly. No, I whispered. I thought I pulled something. Who told you that? The question hovered in the air like a live wire. I opened my mouth. Closed it. He watched me for a long moment, then pulled a chair closer and sat down. I've been doing this for over 30 years, he said. There are patterns we're trained to see. The combination of a new head fracture, an old untreated rib fracture, and your reluctance to answer some of my questions raises certain flags. He paused, choosing his words. In this state, when we see injuries that may be consistent with ongoing abuse, we are required by law to notify the authorities. This is not about forcing you to accuse anyone. It's about making sure someone documents what's happening to you and that you're safe. The word abuse seemed to echo in the tiny room. My instinct was immediate, almost involuntary. No, I blurted. No, that's not. My sister and I, we roughhouse, that's all. She was trying to be funny. I slipped. The stair thing was just me being clumsy. Was anyone with you when you fell down the stairs? He asked gently. Lindsay had been. Right behind me. She'd rushed down, made a big show of helping me up, and then later told me not to tell Mom because she'll just freak out and blame me for your lack of coordination. I stared at my hands. Said nothing. Dr. Matthews nodded once. Like that silence was an answer all its own. I've already placed the call, he said softly. A detective will be here soon to talk with you. You are not required to say anything you're not ready to say. But know this, you are not alone in this. And you are not crazy. Detective Morrison showed up less than an hour later. If you're picturing some hard-boiled TV cop, forget it. She looked like someone's stern but fair high school English teacher. Short gray hair, simple clothes, no nonsense. She pulled a chair right up beside my bed and introduced herself in a calm, matter-of-fact voice. I'm just here to listen, she said. You're not under any kind of investigation. I'm gathering information. She flipped open a notebook. Can you walk me through what happened last night? Start to finish, in your own words. We went over the sequence. The dinner. The drinks. The cake. She didn't rush me. When I got stuck or apologized for rambling, she'd say, You're doing fine. Take your time. Then her questions got sharper. Who ordered the drinks? Who actually handed you yours? Who suggested cutting the cake at that particular moment? Who was standing behind you when you leaned over the table? Who was with you on the stairs 3 years ago? Who suggested not seeing a doctor then? I answered, and every time it was the same name. Lindsay. 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 Has she ever told others that you're clumsy? Overly sensitive? Prone to overreacting, the detective asked. Yes, I said slowly. It's kind of a family joke. And how do people respond when you say you're hurt? I almost laughed. They say I'm overdramatic. Or that I'm jealous. Or that I always try to make things about me. The words tasted different coming out of my mouth in that fluorescent-lit room. Less like truth. More like programming. Before we could go further, the door flew open. My mother stormed in, eyes already blazing. Dan followed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Lindsay trailed behind them, a masterclass in controlled distress, red-rimmed eyes, streaks of mascara, a slight tremble in her hands. Kelly, she choked out, rushing to my bedside. Oh my God, I've been so worried. I can't believe this got blown so out of proportion. You know I never meant to hurt you, right? We've always played around like this. I opened my mouth, not even sure what I was going to say. Did I believe that? Before I could find out, my mother stepped between us and turned on the detective. I don't know what my daughter has been telling you, she said, voice cold enough to frost glass. But this is a private family matter. Kelly has a flair for the dramatic. She always has. She's been jealous of her sister since they were kids. Mom. Tell them, Kelly, she snapped without looking at me. Tell them you don't want to pursue this. That it was an accident and you're overreacting like you always do. Do you understand what you're doing to your own sister? To us. Lindsay sniffled, eyes downcast, the picture of wounded innocence. Please, she whispered. Just tell them, Kel. I never meant. I looked from my mother, furious and righteous, to my sister, shaking and wide-eyed to Dan, who stared fixedly at a spot on the wall. And I recognized the scene. Different room, same script. Kelly is exaggerating. Kelly is jealous. Lindsay is good. Lindsay would never. Anyone who suggests otherwise is the enemy. Detective Morrison didn't interfere. She just watched. Her eyes moved between all of us, quiet and assessing. And then, from the back corner of the room, a quiet voice cut through the tension. Enough. We all turned. I hadn't even noticed Aunt Patricia sitting there, half-shadowed by the curtain. She stood now slowly, as if every inch cost her something. Her hands were trembling, but her chin was lifted in a way I'd never seen. I have been silent for 30 years, she said, voice thin but steady. I have watched things I should have reported. I convinced myself it wasn't my business, that I was overreacting. I did it because I was afraid of my sister. But I can't keep my mouth shut anymore. Not after last night. Not after seeing Kelly on the floor with blood in her hair while people laughed. Patricia, my mother hissed. Don't you dare. She left you something, Kelly. Patricia went on, ignoring her. Your grandmother. Eleanor. A box. I froze. You need to open it, she said. Tonight. She knew what was going on. She knew no one would listen. So she started keeping proof. She stepped closer to my bed and squeezed my hand. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What happened at your birthday was not an accident, she said. And it wasn't the first time. If you don't face this now, it won't be the last. She straightened. Looking at Detective Morrison, she added louder, I have information I should have given someone a long time ago. I'm ready to talk. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother look afraid. Not angry. Not disdainful. Afraid. That evening, Patricia drove me home from the hospital. The doctor sent me out with concussion instructions, pain meds, and strict orders not to overdo anything. Too late for that, I thought. The ride was mostly quiet. Every bump in the road echoed in my skull. But underneath the physical pain there was this tense, humming awareness, like someone had finally flipped on a light in a room I'd been stumbling through in the dark. Open the box. Proof. At my door, my hands shook so badly I fumbled the key twice. Patricia followed me in and closed the door gently behind us. We walked down the hallway in silence. In my bedroom, I dragged a chair over and reached up to the top shelf of the closet. My fingers closed around smooth, dusty wood. The box felt heavier than I remembered. We sat at the kitchen table. Patricia folded her hands in front of her like she was bracing for impact. Whatever's in there, she said, your grandmother wanted you to have. She knew there were things she couldn't stop, but she could try to equip you. I stared at the tarnished brass latch for a moment, then flipped it open. Inside were 3 things. A thick set of stapled papers with an official seal, a faded photograph, curled at the edges, and a letter in my grandmother's looping script. I reached for the papers first. Transfer on death deed, the bold heading read. The legalese blurred for a moment, then clicked into place. 5 years earlier, my grandmother had signed a document that would transfer her house, her creaky, beautiful Victorian with its bay windows and steep stairs, to me automatically upon her death. 3 years ago, when she passed, that transfer had gone through. Quietly. No court fights. No debates. Her house had been mine for 3 years. No one had told me. I don't get it, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Why wasn't I notified? Why didn't Mom say anything? Patricia looked sick. Keep going, she murmured. I picked up the photo. Grandma younger, hair darker and thicker, held a small child on her hip. Me. 3-ish. Curly hair. Round face, uncertain eyes. Her arms were wrapped around me like she was shielding me from something you couldn't see. Off to the side, almost cut off by the frame, stood another tiny figure. Lindsay. 2 years old, maybe. I lifted the picture closer, squinting at her face. Baby cheeks. Soft little dress. Eyes like cold marbles. She wasn't pouting. She wasn't annoyed. She was staring at me with a look I didn't have a word for. Not sibling rivalry. Not childish jealousy. Something flat. Focused. Hungry. Even as a toddler. My stomach flipped. My fingers felt numb as I reached for the letter. On the front, in that familiar, careful handwriting, my sweet Kelly. I unfolded it with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. My sweet girl. If you are reading this, it means you have reached a point where you need answers more than you need the illusion that everything is fine. I have watched my daughter, your mother, fail you. Not because she is evil, but because she is weak in ways that hurt other people. I have watched your sister hurt you, and I have watched everyone around you pretend not to see. I tried to speak to your mother about what I saw. She called me senile. She said I was dramatic and cruel. She told me I was trying to turn you against your own family. So I did the only thing left to me. I started writing things down. I cannot change your mother. I cannot fix your sister. I cannot go back in time and protect you the way I should have. But I can give you what I have, a house no one can take from you, and the truth no one can erase. The house is already yours, legally. When I die, it passes to you automatically. But, sweetheart, you must be careful. Lindsay found out about this before I passed. She was not happy. I saw something in her eyes that day that frightened me more than anything else I have ever seen. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it is. I wish I could be there beside you now. But since I cannot, let this be my hand on your shoulder, my voice in your ear. I see you. I have always seen you. I love you with no conditions at all. Grandma. Tears blurred the ink. I set the letter down carefully. Patricia reached across and wrapped her fingers around mine. There's more you need to know, she said. Her voice cracked. When your grandmother was in hospice, Lindsay offered to help get her affairs in order. That's when she found that deed. I could picture it. Lindsay rifling through papers, hunting for whatever she thought she was owed. She went white when she realized the house wasn't coming to her, Patricia said. I was in the hallway when she confronted your grandmother about it. Patricia swallowed hard. Eleanor told her she'd made the decision years earlier. She said she loved both of you, but she trusted you with the house. She told Lindsay plainly that she knew what kind of person she was, even if no one else would admit it. How did Lindsay react? I asked, even though I already knew. I'd never seen her that furious, Patricia whispered. She screamed. She said it wasn't fair. She stormed out. A few days after the funeral, Patricia had walked past a half-closed door and heard Lindsay's voice. Cold. Controlled. She was asking someone, probably a lawyer, about challenging something called a transfer on death deed. When the person on the other end didn't give her the answers she wanted, Patricia said, she said something I will never forget. She said, there has to be a way to prove the old woman wasn't competent. Or that Kelly pressured her. And if not, well, accidents happen. People lose their independence all the time. Someone has to step in and manage things. My ribcage felt too tight. 10 days after the funeral, I'd fallen down a flight of stairs and spent weeks feeling like I'd been stabbed every time I inhaled. It's just a bad bruise, Lindsay had told me. I stared at Patricia. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, my voice calm only because I was too numb for anything else. She flinched. Because your mother has been telling me I'm crazy my whole life, she said. Because she threatened to cut me off from all of you when I tried to speak up before. Because I told myself I was overreacting. Because I was a coward. Her eyes filled. I'm so sorry, Kelly. I should have protected you. I didn't. That's on me. For a long moment, no one spoke. Something inside me, some quiet, obedient part that had kept me small and apologetic for 36 years, finally snapped. I can't change what any of you did, I said. But I can change what happens next. The next morning, I sat in an estate lawyer's office. The deed spread out on polished wood between us. He confirmed what the document already told me. Grandma hadn't just intended to give me the house. She had. 3 years ago. Legally, completely, with no strings. And at this point, after so much time had passed, there was almost nothing anyone could do to challenge it. I walked out of that office feeling two things at once. Grief. And something I hadn't felt in years. Leverage. On the sidewalk outside, I called Detective Morrison. I have more information, I said. About a possible motive. And a pattern. She listened as I talked. About the deed. About Lindsay finding out. About the timing of every major accident I'd had in the last 3 years. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. We've already subpoenaed the restaurant's security footage, she said. I'd like you to come down and look at it with us. Victims often notice details we might miss. Victim. It didn't feel like an insult anymore. It felt like the first honest label anyone in my family had ever given me. The footage from the restaurant was both grainy and brutally clear. In one clip, I watched Lindsay at the bar. She ordered drinks, leaned casually against the counter while the bartender turned away. Her hand dipped into her purse. Something small passed from her palm into one of the glasses. My glass. She looked around once, quickly, then picked up both drinks and carried them to the table with a bright, careless smile. In another clip, I watched myself through the lens of a camera instead of the foggy lens of memory. Laughing a little too loudly. Blinking like I couldn't quite focus. Swaying slightly in my seat. Lindsay's gaze kept flicking to me. Measuring. Waiting. The angle on the cake moment was different than the one my family had had. From above, there was nothing playful about it. No, oops, lost my grip. It was a deliberate shove. She drove the cake forward and down hard, at an angle that sent my head snapping back into the other table. After I went limp, she leaned over me. From the side, her face was half hidden. From above, there was no hiding anything. That same tiny smile, There and gone again. I had to grip the edge of the desk to stay upright in my chair. Detective Morrison set a tablet in front of me next. "We obtained a warrant for your sister's phone," she said. "There are some things we recovered that you should be aware of." I scrolled. Deleted searches. How to challenge transfer on death deed. Signs of mental incompetence in elderly. What qualifies someone for legal guardianship. How to become guardian of adult sibling. Prescription sedatives with few side effects. Then there was a notes file. Title K. Inside a list. Dates. Incidents. Outcomes. Stairs, hurt rib, no hospital, narrative clumsy established. Parking lot, mild concussion? Almost, needs stronger setup next time. Barbecue trip, oh too many witnesses aboard. "I want to be very clear about something," Detective Morrison said, her voice level. "The working theory isn't that she wanted you dead. Not exactly. She wanted you dependent. Discredited. Unable to handle your own affairs." She tapped the tablet. "Everything we're seeing points to a plan to get you declared unable to manage your life. Your mother would petition for guardianship. Under her influence, your sister would control access to you, your accounts, and your property, including the house. My house. The one my grandmother had tried so hard to protect." My stomach rolled. "If things hadn't gone sideways with the cake," she added quietly, "you might not have come in. We might not have seen your old injury. We might never have pulled this thread." The idea that my own stubbornness, my refusal to make a fuss, had almost delivered me into exactly the fate Lindsay wanted made me want to scream. Instead, I said, "What do we do now?" Over the next week, the investigation unfolded like someone laying out all the photographs in a crime board montage. Except this time, I wasn't just the person in the pictures. I was in the room watching. Detective Morrison showed me the timeline they'd put together. The staircase accident 3 years ago? Exactly 10 days after my grandmother's funeral. The same week, an envelope from the estate attorney had arrived at my apartment, unopened, informing me of the deed transfer. The parking lot fall a year later? 2 days after I told my mother I was thinking of going over to Grandma's old place to see what needed doing. The barbecue trip? The weekend I mentioned maybe renting out the house or moving into it myself. Every time I got close to actually acting on my ownership, something happened that painted me a little more as careless. Accident-prone. Incompetent. It wasn't random. It was a campaign. The lab report on the substance in my drink at the restaurant came back. A prescription sedative. Not illegal. Not rare. Just dangerous in the wrong dose, in the wrong person, at the wrong time. Records showed Lindsay had been to multiple urgent care clinics in the last year. Anxiety. Trouble sleeping. Stress. Different doctors. Similar prescriptions. Each time, just enough to look legitimate. Taken together, enough to do real damage. When the prosecutor felt they had enough, they called my mother in. Not as a suspect, as a potential witness. I told them I wanted to be there. They warned me it might be painful. I said, "Painful is familiar." At first, my mother stuck to the script. Lindsay was emotional, yes, but good-hearted. She'd never hurt anyone on purpose. Whatever had happened was an accident that had gotten twisted by people who didn't understand their family dynamic. The prosecutor let her talk. Then, slowly, she laid out the evidence. The video of the drink. The notes file. The search history. The medical records. My mother's hands, folded neatly in her lap at the start, began to shake. Her eyes darted between the pages. Her shoulders sagged, very slightly. For the first time, she seemed to see not a story she could control, but a reality she couldn't spin away. "I knew," she said finally in a small, cracked voice. "I knew something wasn't right with her, even when she was little." She stared at the tabletop. "There were things," she whispered. "The neighbor's cat that went missing. Your cousin who fell down our stairs when he was here. That boy in elementary school she pushed on the playground. He broke his arm. I told myself kids did stupid things. That it was a phase. Every time something weird happened around Lindsay, My mother had gone into overtime, making phone calls, smoothing things over, writing checks. I convinced people it was an accident. I begged parents not to press charges, she said, voice shaking. I told myself I was protecting my child. That's what mothers do. They protect their children. She looked at me then, really looked at me. And I punished you for all of it, she said. I saw how easy you were. How quiet. How little trouble you gave me. I told myself you were strong, that you didn't need me. So I poured everything into Lindsay. Every excuse. Every ounce of denial. She swallowed hard. I thought if I gave her more attention, more praise, more defending, she'd become normal. I sacrificed you on that altar. I made you invisible because seeing you meant seeing what I'd done. Silence sat heavy between us. And in the end, she whispered, I created exactly what I was afraid to admit she was. I had spent my entire life chasing a moment like this. Some acknowledgement. Some apology. Some crack in my mother's certainty. Now that it was here, it didn't feel anything like victory. It felt like looking at the ruins of a building you'd lived in your whole life and realizing it had been structurally unsound from the day it was built. There will be time to deal with this later, I said softly. Right now, we have to deal with Lindsay. Lindsay's arrest was scheduled for Sunday dinner. I chose that on purpose. Not because I wanted a show. Because I wanted witnesses. A lifetime of people shrugging and saying, I'm sure she didn't mean it, had brought us to this point. I wanted them in the room when consequences finally arrived. The table was set. The food was out. Lindsay was half standing at the end of the table, telling a story about some coworker who had stabbed her in the back. She laughed. Everyone else did too, some more nervously than others. The doorbell rang. My mother went stiff in her chair. Dan closed his eyes for a second. Detective Morrison stepped into the dining room with 2 uniformed officers behind her. Lindsay Hughes, she said. Lindsay turned, confusion blooming on her face. What's going on? She asked, laugh faltering. Is this some kind of joke? The detective read the charges in a clear, even tone. Assault. Poisoning. Harassment as part of an ongoing course of conduct. As the cuffs clicked around Lindsay's wrists, her performance kicked in. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. Her shoulders hunched. Kelly, she sobbed. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. We can fix this. We're sisters. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. Don't do this to me. Her voice, the one that had always melted everyone else, washed over me and broke like water on rock. No purchase. No hold. No one moved to help her. My mother stared at her plate. Dan stared at the floor. Our relatives stared at Lindsay like they were seeing her for the first time. And then, as the officers guided her toward the door, the mask snapped. This is your fault, she snarled, jerking her head toward me. The tears vanished. Her voice changed. It has always been your fault. Dad leaving. Mom being miserable. You existing. Her words tumbled over each other now, loud and ugly and unfiltered. That house should have been mine. I was the one who sat with Grandma. I was the one who cared. You never even visited. You sat in your sad little condo with your stupid job, and somehow you still got everything. You ruined everything just by breathing. The body camera caught every word. Later, the prosecutor would call it a gift. In the moment, it was just confirmation of something I'd spent my whole life feeling and never daring to name. She hated me. Not in the sibling fight way. In the core of her being way. That night, after the chaos had settled and everyone had slunk back to their lives, Patricia came to my place again. There's one more thing I need to tell you, she said. Her voice was so soft I almost didn't hear it. When you were 6, she began, I came over for Thanksgiving. You and Lindsay were playing upstairs. I went up to tell you dinner was ready. She stopped, closed her eyes, then forced herself to keep going. I saw her at the top of the basement steps, she said. You were in front of her. She looked around, like she was checking to see if anyone was watching. Then she put both hands on your back and shoved. Images flooded my brain. The free fall feeling. The slam. The white heat of pain shooting through my arm. The weeks in a cast. The way everyone retold it like some funny story about how clumsy Kelly is. I screamed, Patricia said. When your mother came running, Lindsay was already crying, saying you'd tripped. She said she tried to catch you. She wiped at her face. I told your mother what I saw. Word for word. Your mother told me I was sick. That I was jealous because I didn't have kids. She said if I ever said anything like that again, I'd never be allowed in her house. She laughed then, a bitter, humorless sound. So I shut up. For 30 years. I watched. I excused. I lied to myself so I could live with it. She looked at me, eyes red. I didn't get pushed down those stairs, she said. You did. And I let you believe it was your fault. I am so sorry. I didn't hug her. I didn't tell her it was okay. It wasn't. But I did say, you're telling me now. That's more than most people in this family have ever done. A few days later, I went back to my grandmother's house. My house. I walked through the echoing rooms with the lights off, letting my eyes adjust to the dim. I ran my fingers along the banister I'd slid my hand down 1,000 times as a child. In the small front sitting room, her old writing desk sat where it always had. On a hunch, I pulled out one of the drawers. It stuck. I jiggled it until it came free, and behind it, I saw a flat bundle. An envelope, yellowed with age, sealed with a blob of dried wax. My mother's name was written on the front. The postmark was 31 years old. A faded stamp in red ink read, "Return to sender, refused." I held it up to the window. Through the thin paper, I could just make out the first line. I need to tell you what really happened the day Michael left. My father. Hands shaking, I broke the wax seal and unfolded the pages. My daughter. You won't let me get the words out when we talk, so I am putting them here, where you can't interrupt me. You keep saying your husband left because of Kelly. You tell everyone she was a difficult baby, that she cried all the time, that he couldn't handle it. You have spent 5 years punishing a child for driving her father away, and it is a lie. Here is the truth. Michael left because of Lindsay. She went on to describe the night when I was 6 months old. How my father had come home early from a late shift, gone upstairs to peek in on his daughters. How he'd found toddler Lindsay inside my crib, standing over me. A pillow pressed hard over my face. How he'd yanked it away and grabbed her. How I'd gasped and turned from bluish to pink again. He told my mother that night. He begged her to get Lindsay evaluated. She refused. She said toddlers did weird things. That he was overreacting. That he was accusing his own child of being a monster. For years, he'd watched more accidents happen around me. He tried to intervene. He tried to get my mother to see. And finally, when she wouldn't, he'd done the only thing he could think of. He'd left. Cowardly? Yes. But not because of me. Because of who my sister was, and who my mother refused to let her be seen as. You have blamed the wrong daughter, the letter concluded. For 5 years, and if you keep this up, for the rest of her life. I read the letter 3 times. Then I drove straight to my mother's house. She was at the kitchen table when I walked in. I put the letter in front of her without a word. She stared at my face for a moment, then looked down. Her fingers hesitated before picking it up. As she read, her complexion shifted. Denial. Anger. Something like horror. By the time she finished the last line, she looked old. I remember this, she whispered. The mailman brought it. I saw Mother's handwriting. I refused it. I told myself she was trying to destroy my family. I never even opened it. She laughed once, a short, broken sound. So I just decided my version of events was the only one, she said. I decided he left because of you. And I punished you every day for it. She looked up at me. I made you pay for his leaving, for my denial, for everything, she said. I looked at you and saw his betrayal. So I disappeared you instead. My eyes burned, but I didn't let the tears fall. You had 31 years to open that letter, I said quietly. You chose not to. That's on you. Not on Grandma. Not on him. Not on me. What can I do? She asked. Tell me what to do. I'll do anything. I know I can't undo the past, but... Stop looking for a quick fix. I cut in. This isn't a leaky faucet. This is your entire foundation. You've been building your life on a lie. You don't get to patch it with an "I'm sorry" and move on. She flinched. If you're serious, I said, go to therapy. Real therapy. By yourself. Not to talk about me. Not to talk about Lindsay. To talk about you. How you used me as a scapegoat. How you protected one daughter so viciously you handed the other one over to her. She nodded, tears spilling. Don't contact me, I added, until you've been in therapy for at least a year. And even then, there's no guarantee I'll be ready. I decide that timeline. Not you. I stood up. For the first time in my life, I said, I'm not going to help you carry your guilt. Then I walked out. And this time, when the silence followed me, it felt like space, not punishment. 2 months after her arrest, Lindsay stood in front of a judge. Her lawyer did everything he could. First-time offender. No prior convictions. Family issues. Stress. He painted her as overwhelmed, impulsive, regretful. The prosecution painted a different picture. The drink. The notes file. The search history. The medical records. The plans labeled Phase 1, 2, 3. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was flat. Ms. Hughes, he said, this was not a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a calculated pattern of behavior aimed at slowly stripping your sister of her autonomy and funneling her assets into your control. He could have sent her to prison. He didn't. He sentenced her to 4 years of probation, 9 months of home confinement with an ankle monitor, mandatory psychiatric treatment for at least 2 years, full restitution of my medical expenses, and a 10-year order of protection in my favor. She was legally barred from contacting me or coming within 1,000 feet of me or my property, including my grandmother's house. Socially, the fallout was instant. Her employer let her go as soon as the charges hit the system. Friends who'd basked in her charisma backed away once they realized what she'd done. The K-file became legend in our extended family. My sister, the golden child, moved back in with my parents and found herself living under the same roof as the mother who finally, belatedly, saw her clearly. The house she'd tried to take by breaking me? Untouchable. Mine. 14 months after the birthday party where my skull fractured and my illusions shattered, I stood in the front parlor of that house. The rose print wallpaper was gone, replaced with something light and clean. The hardwood floors shone. The rooms felt different. Not because they'd changed, because they had a new purpose. A small sign near the door read, Patricia's House, Support Center for Survivors of Family Harm. We chose harm instead of abuse on purpose. Some people don't recognize themselves in that word, but they recognize harm. Patricia volunteered twice a week, greeting visitors, making coffee, stocking the resource shelves with pamphlets. She was in therapy, too, wrestling with her own decades of silence. Helping other people speak had become part of her healing. Women came there with stories that sounded uncomfortably familiar. My parents say I make things up. My siblings tell me I'm too sensitive. My family cares so much about how we look that they don't care what's happening behind closed doors. At Patricia's house, they found legal referrals, support groups, an emergency overnight room. But most importantly, they found someone who would look them in the eye and say, without flinching, I believe you. I walked through those rooms sometimes and thought of my grandmother. Of all the times she'd fed me cookies and listened to me talk about school. Of the way she'd slipped that box into my hands as the last act of her life. Her house wasn't just shelter anymore. It was a lifeline. 16 months after that birthday, a car pulled up outside. I saw it through the front window. My mother stepped out, hugging a cardboard box to her chest. She walked up the path slowly, as if every step cost her something, and rang the bell. I opened the door. We stood there, separated by the threshold. Her eyes flicked past me, taking in the interior behind my shoulder. the open doors, the quiet murmur of conversation from a support group in the next room. "I've been in therapy for 14 months, she said before I could speak. "Every week. My therapist told me not to come here expecting anything. Not forgiveness. Not a relationship. Just to give you this." She held out the box. "Some of your grandmother's things," she said. "Photo albums. Journals. I thought they should be here. With you. In this place." I took it. We stood in silence for a long moment. "You've built something good here," she said finally, voice low. "Your grandmother would be, well, proud doesn't even cover it." Maybe she was right. Maybe not. Either way, it was the first sentence she'd ever said to me that wasn't about how I'd inconvenienced someone else. "I'm going to keep going to therapy," she added. "Not because I think it will get me back into your life. Because I finally understand just how much I need to change, whether you ever speak to me again or not." "Good," I said. "That's the only reason that counts." We didn't hug. We didn't have a big, tearful reconciliation. We just stood there, two women finally seeing each other clearly, maybe for the first time. Then she turned and walked back to her car. I closed the door. Behind me, laughter drifted down the hallway from a group room, soft and tentative. Life still happening. For 36 years, I believed I was the problem. The awkward one. The clumsy one. The girl whose very existence broke her family. I absorbed every story I was told about myself and wore it like a second skin. It took a cake to the face, a skull fracture, old broken ribs on an x-ray, and a box of letters from a dead woman to finally strip that skin off. I wasn't the problem. I was the target. And the day I stopped accepting the role they'd written for me was the day my real life started. People talk about revenge like it's making the person who hurt you suffer. But here's what I've learned. Real revenge is building something beautiful out of the wreckage they left behind. Something they can't reach. Something that turns everything they did to try to break you into fuel. My grandmother's legacy isn't just a house. It's that. The reminder that I am not crazy. That I am not overreacting. That I am allowed to protect myself, even from the people who share my last name. Maybe especially from them. If you've made it all the way to the end of this story, thank you. This isn't just a wild tale about a murderous sister or a dysfunctional family. It's a mirror. Because a lot of us were raised in homes where keeping the peace was more important than keeping children safe. Where respecting your elders meant swallowing your pain. Where being a good daughter or good son meant accepting whatever treatment you got and smiling through it. If any part of my story felt uncomfortably familiar to you, if you've been the scapegoat, the invisible one, the person everyone blames when anything goes wrong, I want you to hear this clearly. Your pain is real. Your memories matter. Your boundaries are not betrayal. Saying no to people who hurt you is not cruelty. It is self-preservation. And it is allowed. It is never too late to choose yourself. Not at 16. Not at 36. Not at 66. If this story stirred something in you, or made you think of someone who needs to hear it, share it. Subscribe if you want more stories that don't sugarcoat what family can sometimes be. And if you feel safe enough, tell your story in the comments. Have you ever had to cut off or push back against family to protect yourself? Did you grow up believing you were the problem, only to realize later you were the designated target? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to gather their own courage today. We read every single comment. Your voice is welcome here.